The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hey there, it's time for the Bronx Buzz, and I am really excited about this evening's program because I have an old friend and a new friend, actually, who are going to be with us this evening. You may or may not know the Bronx Buzz is BronxNet's program where we interview people who are journalists or photographers, or in this case, the first guest is a videographer, and you get an idea of who they are, what they're thinking about when they go out in the field and do all their different work, and then ultimately report to you, whether in print, on camera, on the internet, or whatever. So the first guest, I am just thrilled, my longtime good friend and colleague, Walter Garr. How are you, Walter?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for bringing me.
Walter is a videographer extraordinaire, and this is how we characterize it here at BronxNet, because he does work here at BronxNet. Whenever we have an important shoot, you know it's an important shoot because that's when they bring Walter in to handle the camera or do some of the production for the shoot. Anyway, thank you so much for coming. I thought it would be a lot of fun to chat with you just to get a little background. I mean, we've worked together. We're going to show you a clip of something that Walter, one of the many videos we did together, but also just to get a sense of your background. Now, if I remember, because you probably told me once, you actually you got started here at BronxNet Television?
That's correct.
I love hearing that. Go ahead.
I am a boy from BronxNet. Actually, the beginnings of my career, I have to fully credit it to BronxNet. Wow. They show me the ropes. And I always tell my students I did a bunch of internships in the big networks. But the one that stood out and the one that really grounded me and taught all of the things that I needed to learn at that point was BronxNet. Wow. Because they did give me a camera and say, here, learn it, and then you're going to go out
As
tomorrow.
Opposed to watching somebody else do it.
Or getting coffee for some. and then it was so interesting because I was so excited to be able to get the equipment and to learn how to edit on the good old linear systems. And I remember doing the news show. And I remember
we had a news show, that's right.
Exactly,
that's right.
And I went to do some of the news packages that you commissioned for the news segment, for the sports segment.
So that's got to be a solid 20 plus years ago.
Possibly so.
Not that we want to, and actually, listen, I know Walter a long time, and I know his children. I used to go up to his apartment and edit, and his children, we'd have to put them to bed before we got to editing. And now he just told me his daughter is in college and she's shooting video. I can't even take it. What made you love this? What made you say, well, okay, so I had the cameras in my hand, I had a chance to do all this, stuff at BronxNet, but this is what I want to do. Is there something in the work that turns you on?
I think my first love is editing in the industry, and that came from a total chance. I was a student at Bronx Community College, and I was a music major. Actually, I am a music major. And one day I saw this little sign in one of the walls that said TV studio downstairs.
That's right. So at BCC, they do have that facility. It was like one of the original Bronx public facilities. Came Roscoe Brown, of course, one of the founders.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I went there, and I happened to wander into the basement. Nobody was around. And I was just looking to see, because I'd never seen a studio before in my life. So I went there, and then this gentleman comes in, and he's like, hey, how you doing? And I said, oh, I was just looking for the studio because I saw the sign. And then he says, yeah, come, I'll show you. So he pulled out his keys, he opened the studio for me, and he showed me around. And I was like a kid in Candyland. I loved it. I was like...
Turned you right on.
Totally hooked at that moment. So he explained to me the 3 cameras, set up the lighting grid, and he brought me to the control room and the edit suites. He said, this is what we do. We have shows with the students, so if you become part of the AV program, you can take that. I immediately jumped on the next semester. He happened to be my first professor ever.
Do we want to credit and give him a name?
His name is Donald Canty, one of my favorite professors because he showed me there. So he comes in. I'm waiting for the class. He shows up. He introduces himself. He says, "Hi, I'm Professor Canty. I'm the director of the program." So I actually met the director
Right off the bat.
the very first day.
Great.
And he was my first boss eventually there because he hired me.
And so let's cut to the chase. And I know there are photographs of all the things that Walter does. So we're going to show some of those photographs while he talks. Talk to me, we were just talking a moment ago about, just to catch up, about all the different things you do. So let's do that. And then we're going to show some of his extraordinary work. So talk about some of the work that you do.
I'm really blessed to be able to work in different
And
parts
let's put
of the
some
industry.
of those pictures up.
Absolutely. I do a bit of everything. Like I mentioned, editing is probably my forte and the item that I enjoy doing. And it's fortunate that people pay me for the job that I can stay over and over and over and keep doing that. I do a lot of motion graphics for a lot of different companies, and I like to film stuff, and a lot of our collaboration over the years have been filming different projects. And finally, now I get a chance to also share what I've learned over the years with students at Lehman College.
So you've been teaching at Lehman
I
as well.
have also teach with them. I teach post-production, editing, and audio post-production.
Before we show stuff, we're about to show Walter's reel, which is extraordinary. What, in your mind, what makes you, I mean, I know what I would think because we've worked together, but, and they, by the way, are you a drummer? Do you play the drums?
I do.
I never knew that.
I
what skill do you think that you bring to make? I mean, you've won Emmy Awards. I've sat in his living room, and while you're editing, you're staring at these Emmy Awards. What is it that makes you so good?
I think every time I look into a project, a lot of people ask me, so can you do an Emmy project for us? Can you do this?
Yeah, sure.
And I
Let's
think
call it right up.
And what I think what I bring to the table is that I try to treat every project, whether it's for a big multi-million-dollar company
Or a little project
or a
with
smaller
Gary.
project
Yeah,
that
yeah.
we do, that this is or it could be the next Emmy. There's no difference. It's the quality.
And I'm going to just tell you, Walter's easy to work with. He knows his stuff. And so many times you work with a videographer and you say, hey, can we do this? And they say, oh, I don't know. And then it comes back and you got to ask him 10 times when, maybe because Walter and I know each other so well, when I say this is what I want, he actually knows how to deliver it and usually one step better. He's technically adept at the graphics. So we're going to show you reel, right?
Sure.
He calls it the sizzle. I suppose it sizzles, but you're really going to enjoy it. This is, we call him the great Walter Gar. But here you go. Let's let her rip. The sizzle. There it is. That's Walter's reel. Listen, he could probably go on and on and on, but you saw the variety of graphics. And I would say BronxNet Television should be very proud. We go from you walking in not knowing anything in the mid-'90s to what you're able to do now. You and I have worked on a couple of projects.
Right.
Walter lives in Van Cortlandt Village, which is where I live, so it was really nice when Amalgamated Housing turned 85. You and I worked on a little video, so I just, I mean, I don't know that we need to spend a lot of time on it. In terms of your enjoyment, that was a labor of love. I mean, neither of us got paid for it. We got our expenses taken care of, so it wasn't we were hired. Let's roll some of that footage of I think it was cooperative neighborhoods or something like that. But that was a real, all of it you love, but that was a labor of love, wasn't it?
Absolutely, totally. I think one of the things that I enjoy about documentaries, and aside from working with you at that opportunity, is that we get to see, you know, the real people behind this complex. It's not just the buildings, but it's the little stories that you get to tell, and you get to connect with them, and then you get that extra peek at behind the scenes of what is their life and how they go about doing that. And then when you have a whole community building on that, you have this magnificent place, and I'm really proud to live there.
Yeah, and we're seeing some of the footage now that we shot. And you reminded me, which I didn't recall, is that we really worked almost for a year on that to gather some of this stuff for all the different events. And we did, ultimately, we had to wrap it up and finish it. But there you get a sample of Walter's work. What's next for you?
Well, I am working on several projects at this point. I always do, there's plenty of projects for BronxNet that I'm currently working on. And I do a lot.
You want to name one? I mean, I don't know if we're giving any secrets away.
Well, not right now. I actually just finished a nice package for the Van Cortlandt Golf, the house there, the restaurant that they have there, which is, I think it's the lake
antique house, right?
Yeah,
that was in
house.
that movie, right? It was in I forget already what Wall Street. I think it was used in Wall Street.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I just finished cutting that, and then it came out a fantastic piece. I actually didn't know about him a lot, and after going there, I ended up spending a lot of you know, my free time just to go there because it's such a magnificent little gem, and it's still not full, so I like that for myself. And I finished also a nice promotional campaign that I believe BronxNet is running it on the rest of the networks within the Optimum and Verizon channels. So that was, you know, I was really proud of that piece. It came out really nice, and it showcased their work.
You won an Emmy, was it the Hunts Point?
I did.
Piece?
That's
See?
one of my Emmys.
I remember.
Very good.
I remember. So to wrap it up, there is a little promo you did for BronxNet Television, and I thought it would be appropriate to wrap that up. So we go from your roots to giving back, so to speak. There you go. All right, so this is Walter Garr producing a very short 30-second promo for BronxNet Television.
We built a media network for you.
BronxNet TV.
Come learn in your new state-of-the-art studios at Lehman College.
At Mercy College.
And coming soon to the South Bronx in the Hub.
Inspire with your stories, culture, history.
Your Bronx on BronxNet.
Engage with us.
Connect with us at your channels and at BronxNet.tv.
Learn, engage, inspire. BronxNet TV.
From the Bronx
to the world.
BronxNet.
And that is one of the many reasons why BronxNet Television looks so great, and that's because of Walter Garr's work. A pleasure, my friend. On we go, right? If I got a project, hey, Walter, what do you think? Usually he's overseas shooting somewhere, but that's okay. I forgive him. But he came in today to spend a little time with us, and I'm sure I'll see you out in the field. How many times do you think you've been behind the camera when somebody has stuck a microphone in my face?
Hundreds of times. Hundreds of times.
It's a pleasure, Walter.
Lovely to be here.
Yeah, and he does all the demo reels. You did a demo reel for my son many years ago, and now he's, anyway, a pleasure. Thank you. We're taking a break. When we come back, we're going to meet a new reporter from City Limits. Don't go away.
Sure, I look cute now, but when my owner lost his job, it was rough. I was living on the street, and one night, me and this Cocker Spaniel got into it so bad, I wound up looking like an ice cream cone. I cried a little bit, but thankfully I got rescued, so I'm running, I'm jumping, all back to my old self, and I'm ready to give unconditional love, even if you put a lampshade on my head.
It's not always easy being a dad.
Do you have panda asthma too? Does that run in the family? This is the home of the most priceless kung fu artifacts.
But when you make an effort,
Dad, we're not supposed to touch anything. Oh, sorry. Go along, son.
it's always worth it.
Whoa!
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
I am gonna get you. I'm gonna get you.
Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov to learn more.
You know what, guys? There's a lot of tree branches and dry brush over here. We should probably move the bonfire over there.
I'm guessing Smokey liked that idea.
Hey, it's Ava, and this is Tess from Vivo's Do It Yourselfie, where we recreate the hottest looks from today's biggest music videos.
After cleaning out our closet, we have a lot of clothes we don't wear anymore.
Like this old t-shirt.
It's not garbage, it's actually a brand new rug.
And to make it, all you need to do is cut, tie, and glue.
Cut the t-shirt into strips.
Tie the strips into knots.
And glue the knots to the bath mat. I love it. Give your garbage another life.
And recycle.
Hey, back with you on the Bronx Buzz, and we are thrilled because we have I guess a new reporter for us, although she's been at City Limits now for several months. It is Sadef Kully. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Before we listen, she writes about, not exclusively in the Bronx, but a lot of Bronx stuff, and we're going to talk about those issues. But let's just find out who you are. So, when did you get into journalism? What a little bit about your background? Where you're from? You're from around here? From somewhere else?
Unfortunately, I wasn't raised in the Bronx.
Unfortunately, because you'd be a better person for it.
But I was raised in Queens my whole life. I've lived in New York my whole life.
You go.
And I basically had an interest in journalism since my childhood.
Really?
Yeah, very early on. And I come from immigrant parents. My parents are Pakistani and Iranian. Mm-hmm. And I basically grew up watching the Gulf War and Peter Jennings, and kind of just fell in love with the news.
That's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then you went to high school and college in the city, somewhere else?
In Queens. Yeah, I went to college at CUNY York College. I graduated from there.
Okay.
And unfortunately, I graduated in 2009 when the recession was booming.
Right.
And I couldn't find a job. There wasn't anything out here, so I packed up my stuff and went overseas, and I reported in Afghanistan and Pakistan for a period of during the war.
During the war, wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for doing that. And
for a few years.
Who ran the stories that you wrote?
I worked with a local Pakistani English newspaper called Dawn. It's quite famous on that side of the world, and I had the privilege of working with their website and being a part of that, and getting to report on really important stories there.
Well, congratulations for being so enterprising, because so many people say, "Well, all right, then I'll get into the financial business." But you stayed because you loved it, and you went to the Columbia J School.
Right. I came back and I applied to Columbia Journalism School, got accepted, and then I ended up working in the Bronx there. So that's kind of where my roots lie, and that was 2012, and that was during stop and frisk in the Bronx. This is during the Hastings trial court case.
Listen, there's no shortage of stuff in the Bronx.
So I got to cover. I was focused on the South Bronx and the Mott Haven area.
I'm always interested when people come from elsewhere. What's your impressions of the Bronx? What's it been like covering the Bronx? Just give me some, because that kind of outside feedback is always real interesting to me.
What do you mean by outside?
Outside meaning that you from Queens.
Okay.
To us, Queens is
so very
elsewhere.
far away. I think like every.
That's what I mean.
I think like every borough has its own personality.
That's what I'm getting at. I knew you knew.
Yeah, and I think that the Bronx is resilient. That is one thing without a doubt that I've noticed time and time again. And it's a very family-oriented, it's almost like any area that you walk into, no matter how unfamiliar with you are with it, if you've never walked into that neighborhood, there is almost like a home-like atmosphere that I've always felt about the Bronx. And I feel when I walk around in the streets when I'm covering the Bronx, I don't feel like I'm in another neighborhood. I feel like I'm in my neighborhood.
You know, I'm so thrilled to hear you say that, because it's what I feel all the time, is that it's like I walk into a deli in the Bronx, I just feel like talking to the people because I know who they are.
Exactly.
You know, and they know, you know, it's that kind of thing. Anyway, let's really get into a couple of things. You have really covered some really important issues. Let's start and talk about the rezoning. The Jerome Avenue rezoning is underway. So do we want to start with that and just talk about what you've written about with that and your impressions? I mean, I think there's no question there are some people and businesses getting displaced. And then we can talk briefly about the prospects for the Southern Boulevard rezoning.
Sure. Jerome Avenue, when I started with City Limits was in May. So Jerome Avenue had just become approved. And by the time I got there to report on some of the auto businesses, a lot of shops had already received notices that it was time for some of the auto body workshops to exit out. And if you go back there now, some of them are gone, like they're not there. It's as if they didn't ever exist.
And those areas will be taken down for new housing over
right. That's part of the over a dozen neighborhoods that de Blasio has planned for affordable
Do
housing.
we know what happened to those businesses, or are they just out of business?
I
mean, there was about $1.8 million supposedly to go to them, but how far does that go?
So I'm working on following up on that story now to kind of figure out where all of them are.
So now, I mean, to some degree, it's part of history because it's already been approved. We're on our way to a Southern Boulevard rezoning, and now they're doing the studies and they're interviewing people and whatever else, having hearings. Do you have a sense that the city learned something from the Jerome Avenue rezoning, or do you think the process is ultimately going to turn out to be very similar?
I think it's too early right now to tell if they've learned anything from the Jerome Avenue rezoning. And I think that's the issue with a lot of rezonings right now. They're happening very quickly from back to back, and even Councilman Francisco Moya, during one of the hearings for the Inwood rezoning, said, I think we need to take a step back from the city, take a step back and kind of wait it out and see what the impact of these rezonings are. So these are things that might be up for discussion in the coming year that we might see.
Over the years, and I've been obviously covering the Bronx a little longer than you, but many of the projects that have gone on, whether it be the site selection for the filtration plant, for obviously the Yankee Stadium areas, when they do environmental studies and this whole process, there doesn't seem to be any kind of verification of what goes into those studies. They say whatever they want, and that becomes like the justification to build something. When you look at it and you say, wait a minute, that's actually not true. And you wrote a comprehensive piece about the environmental review process. Talk about what you found.
So the Pratt Institute did a report, basically a report on the city's environmental reviews technical guidance process, how they decide when they look at a city, what are the methods that they use to study a rezoning area, and what a rezoning's impact might or might not be. And in looking at that, they found a lot of discrepancies where racial communities of color are not taken into account when they are obviously the most vulnerable and are affected the most in these kind of situations. So it's a real wake-up call for many housing advocates.
To me, it's got to be accurate. That there were things, and many people know I was an advocate against building the filtration plant where they ultimately built it. And I remember when we reviewed a lot of things and then made comments to go, because you get the draft environmental statement. Nothing was really taken into account. It was just this, they simply bulldozed right through it. I wonder if this will, work like your work, and commentary will change the process. Who knows? Let's talk about this, and you also wrote about this, and we don't have anywhere near enough time to get into this. This whole idea of Majora Carter and this idea of self-gentrification,
Right.
and this idea of building land trusts. Does that conflict with what many, I mean, the advocates will tell you, yes, with what advocates want if you know, they build these or they accept these land trusts to take over some of the land in the South Bronx?
Well, the city has actually had a program in 2016 that helped fund some of these projects, or actually initiate some of these community land trusts. And there are a few community groups, organizations that are actually involved in creating community land trusts now. How far along they are, that's something to watch for now. And so Majora Carter is not the first one to think of this. The oldest community land trust in New York City is Cooper Union. It's been around for decades. Sure. But it could be extremely beneficial where affordability especially right now where affordability is a huge issue in New York City, could become a solution for.
Yeah, in other words, rather than have somebody from the outside take a piece of land and build
Right.
it, they're going to allow the community to kind of self-determinate,
Right.
which has been one of the biggest issues over the years. Why has she become such a target? And I mean, she's in the headline of the story.
She's been a target for a while, but people feel betrayed by her. That's the sense that I got after speaking with many people in the community. And she doesn't feel like she's done anything to betray them except try to help her own community. So it's a really something that I actually want to stray away from a little bit, because I think rather than she's an important person in the community.
Rather than, I mean, I feel in many ways the same way. Rather than get in the middle of it,
right?
Let it play itself out. You know, the
right.
people disagree.
I think that like issues like housing affordability, how the rezonings are affecting communities of color and vulnerable citizens. Is it working? These are the things that we should actually be paying attention to instead of.
I guess we'll conclude by saying, so here's a young person from New York City who's getting to cover and write and always wanted to be a journalist. I guess you must be pretty happy at what you're doing. Do you love it?
I'm excited. City Limits has been really great. It's been a real honor to work
Well,
with
you've
them.
been great so far. We're going to keep looking for what you do, and you know what's going to happen. We're going to invite you back.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
Sadef, Kully, thank you so much for joining us. We also thank Walter Gar for being on the program this evening. And guess what? Time to go. We will see you Monday night on Bronx Talk. And what are we doing this Monday night on Bronx Talk? Oh, we're going to be talking about the new solar farms. Is it possible to have solar energy transform some of the energy in the Bronx? That'll be Bronx Talk Monday night.